Why, hello there, and welcome to this video. Although, if I'm being honest with you, lately it feels like I should be starting my videos by saying, why, hello there, this is a video, because the topics are getting dark. Things are getting a little dark, and it sucks, but the orange man is at it again. Actually, he is going hard against the trans community because last time I had talked to you, he had signed one executive order. Now he has signed 4 executive orders targeting us. He has signed the initial one, which I covered. You can watch my video on my channel going over that. Also, he signed a military ban. He just signed a nationwide gender-affirming care ban for anyone under the age of 19, which is what we will be going over today. And he also signed in an executive order targeting schools and teachers. So I will be going over that like later this week. I'll have another video out. But today we will be going over the gender affirming care ban. Now, just to be crystal clear, these are executive orders. These are not bills. These are not laws passed into effect. These are executive orders, so these can be undone by a Democratic president in the future. But that being said, still horrible, still damaging, still terrible. It's an attack on our rights, and it doesn't matter whether it's a law or an executive order. It's just really disgusting that he's spending so much time and energy targeting a minority of the population, using them as scapegoats and trying to essentially target us and erase us from public life. All right, so we are here on Erin Reed's page, Erin in the Morning. I have talked about her before. I really, really recommend that you subscribe to her if you are looking for very solid information and really up-to-date stuff, because she is on it. Like, this is what she does. So if you want to have really accurate, up-to-date information, I recommend following her on all socials. Also, I just wanted to say, if it sounds like I'm super tired, it's because I just woke up from a nap and I am tired. So I know I sound groggy, but I promise I'm here for this and I will try to bring as much energy as I can. So she does have an article on the Trump military ban. This one right here, it says Trump military ban says being trans conflicts with honorable, truthful, and disciplined lifestyle. Now, obviously, I think that this military ban is disgusting. There are a lot of people who have served our country honorably for a long time. They are, very, very loyal to the country and care a lot about their jobs and their service. And to just pull them out of service just because it's, a political stunt is disgusting. It impacts people's livelihoods. This is a really, really disgusting, sad thing. And I wish I had more time to cover all this stuff. I honestly am doing as much as I can. I work a full-time job, so this is like, I'm doing the best I can. But today I wanted to go over this article right here, a line-by-line analysis of Trump's youth care ban executive order. So I'm going to go ahead and read the article. The article will go through the entire executive order, so we will be reading each section of the executive order and talking about what those sections mean, what could happen as a result of them. And then after the fact, we will have a discussion about this and I will give you some thoughts that I have. On Tuesday, Trump signed a sweeping executive order attempting to ban gender-affirming care for transgender youth nationwide, an unprecedented move to dictate medical policy by executive fiat. The order marks one of the most aggressive federal attacks on transgender rights to date, something many anticipated but nonetheless feared. It follows 2 other executive orders issued within days, one erasing legal recognition of transgender people, including on identification documents like passports, and another branding transgender service members as dishonorable in an effort to justify their removal from the military. Together, these actions signal a full-scale federal assault on transgender existence. And also, one thing about the first executive order that wasn't mentioned here is that it will do things like force trans women into men's prisons and essentially force the government to stop providing medication to prisoners who are transgender, which essentially means that they are going to be put in the wrong prisons and then they're going to be forcibly detransitioned, which is horrible. So to continue on here, the executive order wields every available lever of federal power, and even some Trump may not legally control, to attempt a nationwide ban on gender-affirming care for transgender people under the age of 19. Notably, this includes legal adults who are 18 years old. While such a sweeping move lacks legislative backing, Trump relies on dubious reinterpretations of existing laws to justify parts of the order while outright bypassing constitutional limits in others. The success of this effort will largely depend on enforcement and whether hospitals preemptively comply, something advocates are already warning medical institutions against. This analysis will break down the order section by section, outlining defining what it does and how it attempts to do it. Alrighty, so here we go. Section 1, Policy and Purpose. Across the country today, medical professionals are maiming and sterilizing a growing number of impressionable children under the radical and false claim that adults can change a child's sex through a series of irreversible medical interventions. This dangerous trend will be a stain on our nation's history, and it must end. Countless children soon regret that they have been mutilated and begin to grasp the horrifying tragedy that they will never be able to conceive children of their own or nurture their children through breastfeeding. Moreover, these vulnerable youths' medical bills may rise throughout their lifetimes as they are often trapped within lifelong medical complications, a losing war with their own bodies, and tragically sterilization. Accordingly, it is the policy of the United States that it will not fund, sponsor, promote, assist, or support the so-called transition of a child from one sex to another, and it will rigorously enforce all laws that prohibit or limit these destructive and life-altering procedures. So before we go into like what this means overall, I feel like the writing of this is really disturbing. The fact that they describe it as child mutilation and forced sterilization and stuff like that, it is really bad. And they also paint a bleak picture of like the future of transgender people, which is very contrary to the majority of transgender people. There was a massive survey done, I think in 2022, that surveyed hundreds of thousands of Americans who are trans, and it essentially showed that like the satisfaction rate with transition was like 99%, 98% or something like that. And pretty much the only reason people like detransitioned was in concern for their safety. Like if you look at that as a success rate for medical stuff, it's extremely high. Like I'm pretty sure knee replacements only have like a 50% satisfaction rate, so like half of people that get a knee replacement regret it. And I think that like having a medical process where you have 99% satisfaction rate, I don't know, I think that says something about the efficacy of that. But at least to me, the way this is worded is extremely dangerous and kind of gives the impression that this is child mutilation and forced sterilization, like I said, which is it's just wrong. The first section, the policy and purpose section, frames gender affirming care as maiming and claims that transgender youth will soon regret transitioning. This rhetoric, while inflammatory, is misleading. Though the section emphasizes surgical transition, such procedures are exceedingly rare for transgender youth. In reality, the vast majority of transgender minors who receive medical care start with reversible puberty blockers, followed by hormone therapy if they, their families, and their medical providers determine that it is in their best interest. Chest masculinization surgery is only performed in exceptional cases for older transgender youth with significant medical indications. Far from causing harm, this care often prevents the need for more invasive procedures later in life, as it mitigates irreversible physical changes caused by undergoing the wrong puberty. Also misleading is the claim that transgender youth will soon regret transitioning. Research overwhelmingly shows that detransition and regret rates are exceedingly rare. A recent study found that for those who transition as minors, the vast majority remain satisfied with their decision 6 to 10 years later, with only 3% discontinuing hormone therapy. I think that's actually the study I was talking about. This aligns with the reality that transgender youth face extensive waiting periods and rigorous evaluations before receiving medical care. Even the Cass Review in England, frequently cited by those seeking to ban transgender healthcare, identified less than 10 cases of detransition among a sample of 3,000 individuals who were either on waiting lists or had received care. Despite this evidence, the executive order uses these misleading claims to justify sweeping nationwide crackdowns on transgender healthcare. Section 2, definitions for the purpose of this order. A. The term child or children means an individual or individuals under 19 years of age. That right there is already absurd. They are redefining the term child to include 18-year-olds, basically including legal adults in this category of children, which is bewildering. That's absolutely ridiculous. I'm surprised that they didn't just go up to like 99 years old. Like anyone under the age of 99 years old is a child and therefore can no longer transition. I'm surprised they didn't do that. B. The term pediatric means relating to the medical care of a child. C. The phrase chemical and surgical mutilation means the use of puberty blockers, which they use on cis children all the time, and that's not banned. That's completely legal and not considered mutilation, including GnRH agonists and other interventions to delay the onset or progression of normally timed puberty in an individual who does not identify as his or her sex, the use of hormones such as androgen blockers, estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone to align an individual's physical appearance with an identity that differs from his or her sex, and surgical procedures that attempt to transform an individual's physical appearance to align with an identity that differs from his or her sex, or that attempt to alter or remove an individual's sexual organs to minimize or destroy their natural biological functions. This phrase sometimes is referred to as gender affirming care. So here's what Aaron said. So section 2 is a straightforward definition section, but it includes a few critical elements worth noting. First, it defines children as individuals under the age of 19, effectively extending the ban to legal adults who are 18. It is unclear whether this is an intentional move to test the legal boundaries of restricting adult medical autonomy, but it sets a concerning precedent. Second, it defines gender-affirming care as chemical and surgical mutilation, a deliberately inflammatory choice of words. This definition becomes particularly significant in later sections where the administration attempts to leverage existing federal laws, such as those prohibiting female genital mutilation, to criminalize transgender healthcare. Like, it doesn't matter that the overwhelming consensus of doctors and like every medical organization in existence is that gender affirming care is appropriate and necessary life-saving care. It doesn't matter at all because one orange man has decided that it's actually mutilation. It's literally just redefining necessary medical care as abuse. Section 3, ending reliance on junk science. Oh my God. The blatant harm done to children by chemical and surgical mutilation cloaks itself in medical necessity, spurred by guidance from the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, WPATH, which lacks scientific integrity. Like, says who? Says you? You say it lacks integrity? Oh my God. Like, you're not even a scientist. I don't like, this is absurd. You have politicians who are not experts at all on medicine deciding what is medically necessary. In light of the scientific concerns with the WPATH guidance, and also it's not just WPATH, like the World Health Organization. There are so many organizations that agree that gender affirming care is appropriate and necessary and life-saving. Okay, 1. Agencies shall rescind or amend all policies that rely on WPATH guidance, including WPATH's Standard of Care version 8. And 2, within 90 days of the date of this order, the Secretary of Health and Human Services shall publish a review of the existing literature on best practices for promoting the health of children who assert gender dysphoria, rapid onset gender dysphoria, and other identity-based confusion. B, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, as appropriate and consistent with applicable law, shall use all available methods to increase the quality of data to guide practices for improving the health of minors with gender dysphoria, rapid onset gender dysphoria, or other identity-based confusion, or who otherwise seek chemical or surgical mutilation. What's so stupid about this is that if they actually followed through with this, like this section right here, if they actually followed through with it, they would just arrive at the WPATH guidelines. Like, if they, in good faith, went forward with the whole review and best practices and everything, the conclusion that they would arrive at is that this, like, what we are doing is the best procedure. Like they would just arrive back at quote unquote chemical and surgical mutilation. It's just, this is absurd. Section 3 is a policy that rescinds all policies that rely on WPATH guidance. Notably, this is one of a few sections that do not have age limits, which means it likely will apply to adult care as well. This may seem like a small change, but WPATH guidance helps determine things like private insurance healthcare coverage, federal health insurance coverage, guidelines for time off after gender-affirming surgeries, and more. It also helps inform notices put out by various federal agencies speaking of transgender healthcare issues. The more troubling aspect of this section is its directive for the Secretary of Health and Human Services to publish a review of literature on transgender healthcare. Similar tactics have been used in other governments to justify bans on gender-affirming care, with some success in restricting both youth and adult access. In the United Kingdom, this approach led to the Cass Review, a deeply flawed and politically motivated report conducted by individuals with extensive ties to anti-LGBTQ hate groups. In Florida, a state medical board stacked with similarly biased members produced a report purposefully manipulated and used to justify banning care, though it was widely criticized by medical professionals. While Florida's efforts were largely dismissed as bad science, the Cass Review gained initial traction before major medical institutions condemned its findings. The greatest danger of a federally commissioned review by the Health and Human Services Services lies not in its scientific credibility, given that its conclusions are clearly preordained to justify a ban, but in how the media will cover it. If journalists treat the document as a legitimate scientific endeavor, rather than an excuse in political theater, it could lend undeserved credibility to an attack on transgender healthcare. Section 4, defunding chemical and surgical mutilation. The head of each executive department or agency that provides research or education grants to medical institutions, including medical schools and hospitals, shall, consistent with applicable law and in coordination with the Director of the Office of Management and Budget, immediately take appropriate steps to ensure that institutions receiving federal research or education grants end the chemical and surgical mutilation of children. Section 4 is a more consequential part of this executive order. It seeks to hold and research education grants hostage for major medical schools, research hospitals, and teaching hospitals, effectively coercing them into ceasing gender-affirming care for transgender youth. This would impact some of the largest hospitals in the country, many of which serve sizable transgender populations. The move echoes an earlier budget standoff in which Republicans declared trans youth care their hill we die on and nearly defunded children's hospitals simply for offering such care. Now, Trump appears to be using the same tactic to force compliance with his broader effort to eliminate gender-affirming care for minors. So Section 4 is definitely important to the executive order. It holds federal funds hostage and essentially forces, hospitals and medical organizations to adopt these policies if they want to continue to receive such funding. Section 5, additional directives to the Secretary of Health and Human Services. The Secretary of Health and Human Services shall, consistent with applicable law, take all appropriate actions to end the chemical and surgical mutilation of children, including regulatory and sub-regulatory actions which may involve the following laws, programs, issues, or documents. 1. Medicare or Medicaid conditions of participation or conditions for coverage. 2. Clinical abuse or inappropriate use assessments relevant to state Medicaid programs. 3. Mandatory drug use reviews. 4. Section 1557 of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. 5. Quality, safety, and oversight memoranda. 6. Essential health benefits requirements, and 7. The 11th revision of the International Classification of Diseases and other federally funded manuals, including the Diagnostic and Statistics Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition. The Secretary of Health and Human Services shall promptly withdraw guidance titled Health and Human Service Notice Guidance on Gender-Affirming Care, Civil Rights, and Patient Privacy, and in consultation with the Attorney General, issue new guidance protecting whistleblowers who take action related to ensuring compliance with this order. Section 5 contains the bulk of the means of this executive order. It directs the Department of Health and Human Services to take regulatory actions against gender-affirming care, citing several laws and policies that could be weaponized to enact a ban. These range from withholding Medicaid funding from providers or hospital systems that offer such care, to enforcing clinical abuse and inappropriate use regulations in ways that could criminalize treatment. The order also references vague oversight powers and safety memoranda, leaving the extent of the enforcement open-ended. Ultimately, it delegates authority to the Health and Human Services Secretary to determine how best to use these mechanisms to eliminate gender-affirming care for trans youth, broadly empowering the agency to implement sweeping restrictions with minimal legislative input. And now we're going to read two sections back to back. Section 6, TRICARE. The Department of Defense provides health insurance through TRICARE to nearly 2 million individuals under the age of 18. As appropriate and consistent with applicable law, the Secretary of Defense shall commence a rulemaking or sub-regulatory action to exclude chemical and surgical mutilation of children from TRICARE coverage and amend the TRICARE Provider Handbook to exclude chemical and surgical mutilation of children. Section 7, requirements for insurance carriers. The Director of the Office of Personnel Management, as appropriate and consistent with applicable law, shall A. include provisions in the Federal Employee Health Benefits and Postal Service Health Benefits Programs call letter for the 2026 plan year, specifying that eligible carriers, including foreign service benefit plans, will exclude coverage for pediatric transgender surgeries or hormone treatments, and B. negotiate to obtain the appropriate corresponding reductions in premiums. Sections 6 and 7 focus on banning insurance coverage for gender-affirming care. Section 6 targets TRICARE, effectively cutting off access to the care for children of military families. Section 7 extends similar exclusions to the family members of all federal employees, barring coverage for trans youth under federal health insurance plans. Notably, multiple courts have already ruled that such exclusions are unconstitutional, setting up an inevitable legal battle over these provisions. Section 8, directives to the Department of Justice. The Attorney General shall A. review Department of Justice enforcement of Section 116, Title 18, United States Code, and prioritize enforcement of protections against female genital mutilation. B, convene states' attorney generals and other law enforcement officers to coordinate the enforcement of laws against female genital mutilation across the United States and territories. C, prioritize investigations and take appropriate action to end deception of consumers, fraud, and violations of the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act by any entity that may be misleading the public about long-term side effects of chemical and surgical mutilation. D, in consultation with Congress, work to draft, propose, and promote legislation to enact a private right of action for children and the parents of children whose healthy body parts have been damaged by medical professionals practicing chemical and surgical mutilation, which should include a lengthy statute of limitations. And E, prioritize investigations and take appropriate action to end child abusive practices by so-called sanctuary states that facilitate stripping custody from parents who support the healthy development of their own children, including by considering the application of the Parental Kidnapping Prevention Act and recognized constitutional rights. I know this is a long one, just checking in with everybody. I hope you're doing okay. I know this can be distressing to read or hear about. It's definitely stressing me out, but just stick with me. It's better to be informed than not to be. So keep going. We will get through this together, I promise. Section 8 is arguably the most alarming as it explicitly weaponizes the Department of Justice against transgender youth, their families, and their medical providers. The order defines gender-affirming care as mutilation and then exploits that definition to claim that female genital mutilation laws apply to transgender care. It directs the DOJ to enforce these laws against providers and calls on state attorney generals to do the same. The section further extends its reach by instructing federal agencies to investigate and take action against doctors and even pharmaceutical companies that manufacture medications used in gender-affirming care. While states like Texas and Missouri have attempted similar crackdowns using consumer protection laws, these efforts have been considered fringe and largely unsuccessful. However, if the full weight of the federal government is brought to bear, particularly through consumer protection laws that are often used to classify trans healthcare as deceptive, it could severely disrupt access to care nationwide. Notably, the provisions in Part A through C of this section contain no age limit, meaning they could be used to target adults as well as minors. Lastly, the order directly targets transgender youth and transgender sanctuary states. Over the past 3 years, multiple states have enacted laws to protect families fleeing from states that have banned gender-affirming care. This executive order explicitly directs the Department of Justice to prioritize action against those states, signaling a federal crackdown on legal protections that were designed to shield trans youth from hostile policies in their home states. Section 9, enforcing adequate process. Within 60 days of the date of this order, the heads of agencies with responsibilities under this order shall submit a single combined report to the Assistant to the President for Domestic Policy, detailing progress in implementing this order and a timeline for future action. The Assistant to the President for Domestic Policy shall regularly convene the heads of agencies with responsibilities under this order or their designees to coordinate and prepare for this submission. They're going to spend a lot of time trying to bring the price of eggs down, trying to bring the price of groceries down, right? They're going to be focusing on that, right? What a joke. The final section states that this will have a 60-day timeline for the first progress marker in implementation. This executive order is sweeping in scope and will almost certainly face multiple legal challenges across the United States. Many of its provisions are likely unconstitutional, but the administration's strategy, weaponizing dubious interpretations of existing laws to achieve its end, will make the legal battle complex. This mirrors Texas Governor Greg Abbott's attempt to use child abuse laws against the parents of transgender youth. The broad and erratic nature of the order will make it difficult for legal challenges to keep pace with the administration's attempt to flood the zone with overlapping and unconstitutional action. The greatest danger of this order is not simply its illegality, but its ability to force institutions into compliance before courts can intervene. Hospital systems, fearing federal retaliation, may drop gender-affirming care preemptively, creating a chilling effect even in states that have legal protections for transgender people. Its true effectiveness will depend not just on court challenges, but on the willingness of blue states to resist, ensuring their hospitals continue providing care and standing firm against federal pressure. This will be a test not just of the legal system, but of the resolve of the medical community, state governments, and ordinary citizens to protect transgender youth in an era of escalating attacks. Okay, so that's the end of the article. I know that that was kind of a slog and kind of a lot, so I appreciate you for sticking with me, and now I'm going to give my thoughts on the whole thing. First of all, as Aaron said, courts will almost certainly challenge this. They will definitely do what they can, and hopefully as well, we will see medical institutions as well as blue states push back on this and resist implementation. If we're really lucky, a federal judge will step in and say, hey, many parts of this are unconstitutional and very, very overreaching, and just like put a block on it like they have with some of the executive orders. But I genuinely have no idea if that's going to happen. This might come down to people suing, like lawsuits, or this might come down to legal challenges from states. But another important thing to reiterate that Aaron talked about is that this may very well have a chilling effect. So you may see institutions react, or medical professionals react, by withholding care for now because they are scared of the potential implications or the potential criminal charges that could be coming their way if they provide that care. The next thing that I want to say is one of the most obvious things in the world, but obviously it was not about the children. So they talk about the children. Oh, do what you want. You're an adult. Do what you want, but leave the children alone. That is something that I hear all the time. And first of all, no one is trying to trans your kid. Like, people are trans or they're not trans, and that's just a fact. And so, like, there's no social contagion aspect of this, first of all. Second of all, many aspects of this executive order could be used as justifications to ban adult care as well, depending on how they decide to enforce this, depending on whether it all gets through. The way that this executive order is written includes essentially language that could be used to ban adult care. And also, the language of the actual executive order includes 18-year-olds, which are legal adults. So miss me with that it's about the children bullshit. Like, just miss me with it, because it's not true. Next thing I want to say is that obviously parental rights don't matter to Trump. He does not care about a parent's right to have, patient privacy with their child. Like, essentially, this is the federal government shoving itself into a room with a doctor, a child, and a parent, trying to decide what's best for the future of this child, and saying, like, no, we know better. We know better. We're the federal government, and we know better than trained medical professionals and health organizations that have done extensive studies on this kind of stuff. We've had surveys on this stuff, studies on this stuff, and all of it, it's green flags all around. There are no red flags with gender affirming care for minors. It's approached in a very thoughtful and careful way, as we will talk about in a little bit. Also, one thing I wanted to mention is that with the abortion stuff, they undid Roe versus Wade, and Trump said, no, it's such a controversial issue. It should be a states' rights issue. We should have states' rights. States' rights are so important. The states should vote on this stuff. It's so controversial. We should let the states vote on it. What about this? There's no states' rights for this. Apparently, states aren't even allowed, according to this executive order, to have their own policies or laws about this stuff. According to this executive order, if it goes and is implemented as the way it is written, it literally tries to supersede state constitutional laws or laws that have been passed in states. So clearly, he doesn't care about the state's ability to choose as well. Like, states' rights don't matter to him. It's literally just, he will take whatever position he can take to justify what he is doing in that moment. There is no consistency. He is a massive hypocrite. Next, I want to say this specifically to anyone who is a trans minor, who is watching this video, who is scared, who is worried about their future. I just want to say, like, do not let this erase you. Do not let this prevent you from living your life. And also, even if the worst case happens and you are delayed in beginning your transition, it's never too late to transition. I started when I was 29 years old, and I'm thankful that I lived my life up until that point so that I could, get to where I am today. Now, I was repressed and I didn't really know what was going on with me, but I was definitely experiencing gender dysphoria, and I was pretty unhappy. It definitely affected my life, but I am very thankful to still be here and to be at the point where I am accessing transition. And hopefully you won't have to wait until 29 years old to get there. But, I just want to make that very clear that, like, it's never too late. There are a lot of people who don't even realize they're trans until they're adults. And so, worst case scenario, please stick with us. Even if the worst happens and they ban care for minors nationwide, even 18-year-olds, like, I know that's horrible, but don't let it erase your identity. You're still important, you're still valuable, and you still have a future. Also, I want to make it very clear that, like, if a Democrat gets elected in 2028, then they could rescind this executive order. So we're probably looking at this at worst being in effect for 4 years. Another thing that I've been thinking about lately that has been really bothering me is that I've listened to Democrats talk about gender affirming care for minors before, and it has become very apparent to me that everyone in the party is very, very underinformed on this stuff. They are very ignorant about what gender affirming care for minors actually entails. Like when Republicans get up on stage or start talking about gender affirming care and they say things like, you're mutilating 2-year-olds, you're mutilating a 4-year-old. That is the most absurd BS. It has literally never happened, and I can promise you that. Because at 2 to 4 years old, do you know what gender affirming care entails? Clothing, styling hair. Like, gender affirming care is entirely based around like social transition, which includes like how you dress, what pronouns you use, that kind of stuff, how people refer to you. That is what is done to anyone who is under the age of puberty, because guess what? You don't need puberty blockers until you start puberty. So usually, actually, they wait until you hit like Tanner stage 1. They wait until you start puberty and you're actually on the path of puberty before they start the puberty blockers. And then there's extensive therapy during this whole process. And then you're on puberty blockers for a while and you start, HRT or hormone replacement therapy probably around the ages of like 13, 14, 15, in that range. And then you go through puberty, the proper puberty that you should go through as, your gender. And then if surgeries happen, which like they really don't happen with minors, but if they do, there are like only a few, and they're only ever like top surgeries for trans masc people who are like binding all of the time. And if you know anything about binding, it can create damage to your body if you're not using like good binders, or if you're doing it a lot very frequently for a long time. It can actually have health impacts. And so doing those top surgeries for like 17-year-olds, it's beneficial to their health. Like, it's actually better for them than to let them keep binding over and over for long periods of time, which could create damage to like the ribs. So it's just really frustrating to me that Democratic leadership and people in the Democratic Party as a whole seem to have no idea how to counter this stuff. They seem super uninformed, and they genuinely need to spend some time learning about this issue and what it actually entails. If they want to stand up against this executive order and not just kowtow to right-wing framing, they need to know more about these topics. Like, I feel like this kind of stuff wouldn't be so rampant if the Democrats were more effective at countering the right-wing messaging and framing. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that the Democrats get worried about being caught in these gotchas. Like, that happens a lot with the right wing, where they really, really create framing that makes it seem like the Democrats are like these demonic entities. And so they're constantly tossing gotchas at the Democrats, like, oh, you're mutilating children. Oh, you're doing this, you're doing that. And a lot of Democrats are genuinely afraid of being caught up in those gotchas. Like, you need to have confidence in the fact that your positions are right. You can't have this like, oh, I support transgender people until I'm unsure enough that I don't know if I should maybe, I don't know. Like, that's not how we should be positioning ourselves. We should be confident. We should be resolute in our knowledge about these topics. And so I could rant about this forever, but it's something that I noticed that, our elected officials have very little information about this stuff. And if you are paying attention right now and you're watching this video, contact your representatives. Try to provide them information. Encourage them to do more research on this. Encourage them to stand up and start fighting. Public pressure makes a huge difference. If you keep the pressure on and you keep coming back and you keep the pressure on, then representatives will react to that pressure. But yeah, shock and awe, this whole strategy of flooding the zone, of just doing so much so fast that people don't even know how to react. This is horrible. It sucks. I keep seeing people say like, don't let it get you down. Don't let it discourage you. It's going to discourage you. It's going to get you down. It's going to bother you. That's the entire point. And it works. Like, that's why he's doing it. I'm not here to tell you to not feel emotions or to not process what's happening right now, because it's important and it's dangerous. And they are attempting a level of overreach that we have almost never seen before in this country. I think we've never seen this kind of overreach before in this country. Like, this kind of overreach is insane and unconstitutional. So like, make sure that you're doing what you can to process these events, to process these emotions, and to take care of yourself. Like, admit to yourself what you're feeling and how you're feeling and do what you can to work through those emotions and arrive at a more stable position, essentially. I know for me right now, having people in my life be very consistent in the way they treat me, having people who are allies in my life, support networks, all that stuff has been pivotal to me. I don't know how I would feel if I didn't have those things. I think I would feel absolutely terrified. So having people in your life that treat you with respect, that acknowledge you, that affirm you, that is going to be so, so crucial moving forward. And the last point that I want to make here is that we need to organize. We need to organize. If you have supportive parents, or if you are a parent of a trans child, or if you're just a person who's transgender or just an ally, like if you are someone who wants to do something about this, you need to organize. I'm hearing about rallies happening in the United States. I'm hearing about people trying to find local community and seeking out support groups and community networks. That stuff is going to be so important because we can get together as individuals and form a group, and then that group has more power than us as individuals. Like, we can all go and contact our representatives and stuff like that, but rallies, protests, making ourselves visible, putting pressure on public institutions, that kind of stuff is going to be so important. Like, they really, really, really want to scare us back into the closet. They want to try to make it so that we just give up and let this stuff happen. But there are a ton of us, and we are not going back in the closet, and they are not going to succeed in silencing us. We have to be proud, we have to be visible, and we have to make it very clear that these executive orders are not going to dictate how we live our lives. I just want to remind everyone that there was a point in time where being transgender was completely illegal. Quote unquote, cross-dressing in public was completely illegal. And there was absolutely no access to legitimate medical avenues for getting gender affirming care. And people had to get gender affirming care through not so official means. Now, I really, really hope that we are not moving in that direction, but I just want to make it very clear that, like, the US government has tried prohibitions before and it does not work. Like, they have tried a prohibition with alcohol and that was definitely not effective. They have also tried prohibitions with other things like marijuana, and that has also not been effective. Like, cannabis is something that is moved across the country all the time and very many people consume it, and it's not legal nationwide. So, like, the government can make it illegal, but that's not going to stop people from seeking out ways to try to keep themselves alive and stuff. So, you know, I just think that, like, they're essentially trying to force us into the shadows, but I'm not so certain that they'll be able to. Okay, that's gonna be it for me. I'm gonna go ahead and start wrapping up this video. If you watched through this, I appreciate you so much. There was another executive order signed today targeting schools and teachers, and I will be going over that this weekend. I will have another video out. I'm sure Aaron will do an article on that executive order, and I will have a video going over that article as well as my thoughts on that one, probably like Saturday, Sunday-ish. Also, I canceled my stream last week. I apologize for that. I was just very tired and worn out, and I'm trying very hard not to burn out here. I really am making an effort to keep going with this and just be as consistent as I can. But sometimes, you know, if I'm really tired or I'm struggling to keep up, I may have to, you know, skip a stream or something like that just to regain some energy. If you don't know, I work a full-time job as well as doing this on YouTube. So, like, please do not use me as a sole source for information. Please do not use me as, like, your only source of information. I just don't feel confident that I can keep you sufficiently up to date. I can provide you insights and I can be here and try to give you detailed information, deep dives, all that stuff. I will do my best, but I'm working towards being able to be more consistent. It's just that I need to be able to go full time on YouTube in order to be able to cover everything that's going on all the time. There's just a lot of stuff happening. Like, I haven't talked about the Bishop Buddy thing that happened. I've seen people make videos about it, like Samantha Lux, for instance. And so, like, I really do think that you should have other sources of information so that you are staying up to date. Aaron Reed is amazing. There are tons of other YouTubers who are making content about this, like Majority Report, Secular Talk. If you're looking for trans specific creators, there are lots of great trans creators here on YouTube, and supporting us and helping grow this ecosystem is actually really important. It's something that we can do together to show how much support there is publicly for transgender individuals. Like, all of this stuff that the Trump administration is doing is clawing back and trying to destroy our legal protections and dehumanize us legally speaking. But there's actually almost nothing that they can do to revert the public acceptance and the general social progress that we've encountered and experienced over the past like 15, 20 plus years. Like, to give an example, all this stuff is happening and they're trying to destroy our legal protections, but like, I'm still respected and affirmed by basically everyone in my life. And I live in a red state, in a red district. Like, I live in Trump County. Like, I live in a Trump county, definitely voted for, like, overwhelmingly for Trump. When I was in line voting, there were like 2 Democrats, including me, and I'm not even a Democrat in line, but like 2 people voting Democrat. Like, this is pretty much as red as it gets in my state. And still, like, I'm overwhelmingly treated with kindness and affirming attitudes from people. Like, I very, very rarely get misgendered. I very rarely get disrespected. Now, I'm not saying that that means that every red state or every red district or deep red area is safe or you will be treated with respect. I'm just saying that, like, even in areas like this, that you can still find sometimes a way to carve out respect and a life for yourself. And if you're in blue states and in blue areas, then obviously the levels of acceptance and social awareness are going to be higher, and therefore you will maintain, you know, a decent social presence and people will respect you still. Like, there are not a lot of people reading these executive orders, reacting to them. Like, these executive orders are basically for the legal systems, for the agencies to try to destroy our protections and make our lives miserable. Now, if you're looking for a support network or people to help you through these times, I do have a Discord server. So you are more than welcome to join that. You click the link tree, you open the link tree. It's in the description of my video. So you go to the description of my video, open it, click the link tree, opens the link tree, you click the Discord, you're in the Discord. All my socials are also in that link tree, so you can follow me on socials. I'm mostly active here on YouTube nowadays because honestly, I've been struggling to find time to post on other platforms. But I try really hard. I would love to see more people in the Discord. We are at 1,200 members, so there are plenty of people from all around the country, even across the, you know, the whole world in the Discord. And so if you want to talk to people and try to, you know, make friends or build support networks or just find people that are living in a similar situation as you, that kind of stuff, I would highly recommend joining the Discord. Make sure that you're doing all the things for the algorithm. Make sure that you are liking the video. Leave a comment down below, at least for the algorithm, but also just leave a comment to let me know like what you're doing for self-care, how you're maintaining yourself, and you're trying to move forward throughout this time period. Like, what are you doing to try to, you know, take care of yourself? Like, right before doing this video, I took a nap and I cuddled with my cat and it felt amazing. I feel a lot better after doing that. It was just lovely to relax and hear him purring on my chest and give him some pets and stuff and enjoy a nice little nap. Definitely recommend doing something like that. Try to maintain your self-care routines and maybe even increase your self-care routines to try to help you manage your emotions and yourself throughout this time period. Also, hit that subscribe button. Please subscribe to the channel. It would mean a lot to me. It would help me grow the platform. It'll help me get closer to going full time, help me get out more information, make better videos, all that stuff. If you want another way of supporting my channel, you can do Patreon memberships. I do have a Patreon. It's also in the description of the video, and I think it's also in my link tree as well. I have different tiered memberships, but all of that will help me create a funding mechanism so that eventually maybe I can get an editor, maybe I can do something like that to try to help me put out more content and make better content as well. So as I wrap up this video, there will be Patreon members flashing on the screen right now. They're popping up, they're doing stuff and things. Thank you all so much for the support. I really do appreciate it. It means a lot to me every time I open up my Patreon and I see the supporters. I just get an overwhelming feeling of gratitude. Like, really, it does mean the world to me that anyone is willing to give some of their resources to me to try to help me do this thing. So I do have some new super supporters to shout out. I always shout out my super supporters at the end of my videos. They are my top tier supporters, and their contributions especially help me in growing this channel and producing more content. So thank you all so very much. I'm going to shout you out, but we have some new names to shout out as well. So we have Tricia Pizzafred. I really hope I said that right. Katie Bug. And then those are the new ones. So thank you to specifically for becoming new super supporters. Like, seriously, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. That means a lot. And then we have Sarah Buck, Nikki Notzel, Sarah, and Sam Howard. I really appreciate you all. all for your support. Like, it means the world to me. And I hope that I'm able to continue to grow and do a better job of fighting for our community, because that's why I'm here, to try to fight for us. So that's going to be the end of the video. I appreciate you all so much for watching. Thank you. And before we leave, I just have one little thing to ask of you. And maybe you see this coming. Maybe this is a little predictable, but I'm still going to say it. Drink some water.